Recording. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Roger, though you may know me as 𝗟𝗲𝗃𝗃. I'm the event host for today. Today we'll be talking. Well, you probably know about the behind the scenes of Level Up, but this program Roblox started about a year ago. So first of all, I'd like to thank my the panelists today, which are Dan, Dspav, and Erin, or also Breakfast Candy. I'm actually quite excited to host this event. I think it's going to be quite interesting to know a bit what happens behind like programs on Roblox, because usually we see the front but not the back. So having said this, I'll let you to present yourself.
I pick Erin first. Go.
All right. All right. Hi, I'm Erin. I am a senior game designer on Dan's Game Insights team at Roblox. About 11 years of experience in the game industry, mostly in mobile free to play. And I've been at Roblox for about 2 years now. And in addition to being a member of the Game Insights team, I run the Level Up program, which I assume you all know what it is since you are here, but just in case, it is a event and video series that the Game Insights team puts on in order to share game design, game development best practices with the developer community.
That's right, Erin. Your 2-year anniversary is coming up next month. I believe you joined in May of 2020. Yeah. Well, hi everyone. I'm Dan. I'm the lead game designer on the Game Insights team at Roblox. I have the proud title of game designer #1 at the company, the first person with the game designer title. I joined 3 years ago, involved in various things, one-on-one consultancy with some developers. I'm a mentor for the accelerator group as well as Erin. And then, work alongside Erin to produce Level Up. Also have about 11 years game industry experience, particularly in systems and economy design. So I'm the nerd who sits in Excel all day, as you've probably seen on Level Up, and does all the fun math that nobody else wants to do. But yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting us, Roger.
Great. And since I forget about things, I haven't presented myself actually. So I start again. Hello, I'm Roger. I'm the event host for today. I'm mainly a scripter. I've been on the platform since 2013, been developing since 2015. Yeah, that's a bit what I've forgotten. Okay, so a big let's try to explain a bit how this event will work. So we will first have about an hour of panel, and then we have about 20 minutes of Q&A. For the Q&A, we'll use the built-in Q&A system that 𝗟𝗃 has, which you can see is under the chat section. We will enable you to be able to post your questions, and then you will be able to upvote them if you like them. Remember to upvote a question you want to be answered, because that would help us a lot. That would help us a lot to be able to go through the questions. The panel will be divided in about like 2 sections, one an introduction section and then the rest. So if everything is okay, I think let's just start the panel. Okay, so go a bit. So what are your roles inside Level Up and the Game Insights team?
Sure. So I'll go first this time. Yeah. So I lead the Game Insights team. So we do various things, both internally and externally. Really, the whole idea around originally hiring a game designer for Roblox was that I think the best analogy I've ever heard for Roblox is it's kind of like the Australia of the game industry, where it was off on its own for so long, which had these wonderful effects where it sort of grew up unique from the game industry and has its own quirks and its own special things. And one of the things about Roblox I find so amazing is that you have the vast majority of the community grew up on the platform, found a passion for making games, and then just started making games, which is very different from elsewhere in the industry, where you go to college traditionally, you graduate, then you get a job, and you slowly learn on the job, right? So we joined with the intent to bring some of that industry knowledge from outside of Australia into Australia to sort of share with the community, while also learning about the platform to provide insights internally and externally to different developers. So my role has sort of shifted around during the years, but right now I sort of run the Game Insights team, and that includes both Level Up and working with Aaron, who owns the program and runs it, as well as working on various other initiatives, with product teams internally as well as with developers externally. So.
Okay, and yeah, so I'm a member of the team. We also have Kale, who goes by 𝗪𝗏𝘃𝗲𝗹, who is not here today because he has his own initiatives that he runs separate from Level Up, but he is big support for that. So yeah, I am primarily a content designer. So narrative, world building, text, quests, things like that kind of falls under my purview. Also 𝗟𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗹, so first time user experience, onboarding and tutorials. I also specialize in UI and UX. So on the Game Insights team, that's kind of my domain. So if we have accelerators with questions on those topics, or videos that we're doing for Level Up, for example, those are the areas that I focus on.
Great. So about a year ago, you created Level Up. So I think about like March last year. So what was like the idea behind it? Like what objectives did you have, like at least the initial ones when you were creating it?
Well, Dan, you mentioned this, that the Game Insights team was kind of formed to help share those game industry best practices with developers. And we spend a lot of time doing little one-on-one consultations with teams, be they the accelerator teams or through our larger deep dives. And Dan had realized, and I'm speaking for him, sorry Dan, that we could scale up those efforts, that information is really valuable to the entire developer community. And so that's kind of where Level Up came from, was the idea that we should find a way to broadcast that more widely.
Yeah, it's really a passion that both Aaron and I share, because we both went to school for game design and game development. And a frustration that we shared was there wasn't a lot of practical information that you learned. You learn sort of workload and things like that, but you don't learn how to like balance a feature or how to design content or something like that. And a lot of that you really have to learn on the job, and you have to learn it via like word of mouth or from your seniors on the team who sort of teach you that thing. And so really we wanted to sort of, in the same way Roblox is kind of like democratized game development on the platform, we wanted to democratize game design knowledge. And that's really our goal with Level Up, is to sort of share those best practices with as wide of an audience as possible.
So,
we really are.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so we're really trying to hit the entire developer community. So all levels, whether they're beginners or been doing this for years and years, and no matter what phase of development they're in as well, if they're just starting out, designing their core loop for their first game, or if they are in the middle of content cadence on that treadmill during live ops. So we're trying to cover the whole gamut.
Yeah, I actually, for example, for what you're saying about like trying to cover, I think it's really interesting some of the topics that were covered. For example, one of the most recent ones about so partnership and branded games. That one I found like I know that I probably won't work in anything related to that, but I do find it really interesting because in a way it doesn't, like we think that if you do like game design you only do game design. If you work about like you're the one who's contacting others. I think we think that we only do that, and I think especially maybe in other sectors it is like that, but in game development, considering especially Roblox, yeah, you could have some big studios, but usually it's small size. It's maybe one, two, three. So I think it's actually quite helpful to learn things that you by yourself would never like think about. Oh, how can I do it? And other than that, it's like really interesting to see. Okay, how can I take this that maybe isn't related to branded games and then adapt it to that concept? So, having had the program for around a year, do you think that you've been able to achieve those objectives? Is there something that has changed from your objectives?
Yeah. Okay. So I can take that one. I think that we have certainly made progress. So, like you mentioned, we've been at this for a year now. We have held, I think, 14 events and put out 22 videos. So, we are achieving that goal of getting that information out. We've got about 6,000 subscribers now on the Developer Relations YouTube channel, of which 𝗪𝗨 is the majority of the content. So yeah, I think progress is being made. I think there's always a question of how can we improve our presentation of content. How can we make it more interactive for our developers, make it more interesting, easier to consume. And those are things that we're working on now. We're doing some experimentation to try to make it, even more useful as a resource.
Yeah, I would say it's an ongoing process for us. I think it's very important for everyone to know that we are not YouTubers or YouTube professionals or even people who are necessarily comfortable being in front of a camera. And so really when we started 𝗪𝗨, we kind of just took our best shot on goal for what we thought would be effective. And like true game designers, we've just been iterating ever since. So I think a big push this year, and hopefully you've seen, is we're trying to create some shorter videos for people like me who have the attention span of a fly, right? 10 minutes is just enough that I could actually sit down and actually watch it. But we're trying all these different formats and doubling down on the ones that are getting traction. So I think it's going to be an ever growing, ever changing process where we're really trying to find our sweet spot, right? Like we tried multiple panelists for roundtables. That worked out really well. We've tried more interactive workshops. So it's not just like a college lecture where you're sitting there falling asleep while I'm talking about core loops. And so I think we're really happy with what we've achieved so far. And we're constantly looking forward on how we can make it a better experience for everyone, which is why we're always hounding about filling out surveys at the end of 𝗪𝗨 events.
Yes, please.
So, like mentioning the developer feedback is there something that the attendees of 𝗪𝗨 have like been telling you that? So, what changes have you made based on their feedback?
Oh yeah. Too long. Aaron, you probably know this more than me. Too long was one that we got from several prominent developers. They wanted more interactive. Aaron had mentioned earlier, we're trying to hit the entire funnel of developers, from those who have literally opened up Studio yesterday to those who have like top games on the platform. And when you're doing that, not every topic's going to apply to everyone. But I think early on, we thought maybe we'll start super high level and basics, and then we'll work our way down. And one of the big pieces of feedback was, this is cool and all, but can we get more technical? I want more practical stuff that I can actually use, right? Right, Aaron. I'll toss it over to Aaron, but I think those are the big ones I can think of.
Yeah, they were for sure, and it was fair, totally fair. The criticism that they were too long, like our workshop videos are 2 hours, and that makes more sense when you're attending the event, and you're able to ask your questions live, and especially if there's interactivity, like it takes time to do those exercises, and that's all I think fine for an event, but then it's a whole different thing when you're trying to create the video and make that useful for the audience who wasn't able to attend. And so, yeah, we're having to adapt to that. We've started structuring our workshops so that they are easily broken up into segments. So, like the quest writing one is in 3 parts that cover, the basics and then design and then writing. So you can watch any one of those that interests you, or you can watch them all, but you don't have to, you're not expected to sit through an entire 2-hour video and script through it and look for what's interesting to you. So yeah, like Dan said, constantly iterating.
Something I found from like the level ups is that so usually usually what happens in most events is like, okay, so you do your content and then you do your Q&A at the end. So something I found that it's actually quite interesting because, for example, I have bad memory for a lot of things. Um, if you're talking about some topic and then I have to remember at the end after an hour and a half about that topic to ask, I think it's a bit. I would usually forget, and also it's a bit like harder for the panelists to like get back there. And something that I think is actually quite helpful, which I don't know if that's how you started it, is that so it's usually like panel Q and A, so you have like combining it. And something I really that may for others maybe it's not, but like the after parties in a way, because it's a way of like, so it's not that formal, so you can ask questions much easier, and it's like you also like, so you can go off topic a bit, but it's still, because in those talks that there, as you said, there's people who maybe just open, well, not maybe just open studio, but who have 1 2 years of experience, and then there's others who have maybe 10 years of experience. So I think it's also a way of meeting and asking maybe those people who usually you would not be able to reach or attend um, some question. So have you had any experience hosting these types of events before? Um, so I guess one of the main challenges you found was probably like adjusting the time or something like that. But what were your main challenges when starting?
Oh boy. I just want to preface this by saying thank goodness for 𝗪𝗵𝘁. She's our producer because she does have experience with events and also with YouTube, neither of which are things that Dan or I had any experience with previously.
And
So
there's nothing post can't fix.
yes, had done some video editing, so that was useful. But no experience doing any of this sort of thing. In terms of challenges, like logistics are a big one always, especially now that we've started having multi-team panels for our roundtables. Trying to schedule people from different teams has been a little challenging, but 𝗪𝗵𝘁 is handling that for us. So thank you, 𝗪𝗪𝘁. Yeah, Dan, what do you got?
Previous to this, I think probably the biggest hosting thing that I did was like RDC 2019, like giving a talk to 100 people, which was nerve-wracking. And I think Roblox in general has been a brand new experience because when you're game developing, you're not really giving a speech to a big audience of people, right? At most, it's maybe like 10 other people in a room that you're sort of pitching your feature to, and they're people that you've worked with for over a year or something. So to go from that to standing in a room of 100 people and giving a talk to now being on YouTube is definitely not something I expected to occur in my career, but it seems to be going well so far.
So you've been mentioning panels, workshops. So can you explain a bit like what both of those events are like? What are the main difference and the main like challenges you have when doing each of them?
Sure. Yeah. So workshops, like Dan mentioned, are kind of more lecture based. It's one of the Game Insights team members, so me, Dan, or Kale, so far just kind of doing a presentation, and then more recently trying to make it interactive as well. So there's some hands-on elements, and also including some resources that developers can take away from it. So documentation examples, templates they can use to create their own documentation. Dan did this amazing spreadsheet for balancing a season pass feature. So things like that. When we really want to like get deep into a topic, we go with a workshop. But roundtables are panel discussions, and that's really where we want our developers to do the talking. They are developers who have proven success, who are already demonstrating these best practices and can speak with authority on them and why those practices have contributed to their success. And so we've found that they're a very useful voice for that because they are this example. Everyone has played these games, they're familiar with them, and they want to know how they've done what they've done. So yeah, I think there's good reason to listen to them, maybe even more than us, because they've been successful on this platform.
Yeah. Plus one that I think the main thing with roundtables is we've just observed over the years, doesn't matter how knowledgeable or experienced we are in a certain game design topic, we've just found universally that the community learns much better from other developers than they do from us. So it was really important for us to get developers in that are doing best practices on the platform and having them sort of speak for themselves and the work that they do to the community at large. So I think that's really the spirit of the roundtables. We actually, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, the original idea was just workshops. And then after a while, we started to think like, do people really want to hear us talk every single video, or would it be better to have somebody like a 𝗪𝗵𝘁 or an 𝗟𝗏𝘃 on to talk about what they actually do best? And so that's really where the roundtable idea sort of came from. So
Maybe have you thought about, so like having a workshop and a panel combined in a way. So instead of having it so it's, oh yeah, it's a boring 2 hour lecture, having it so it's like discuss it at the start and then like see how that's applied.
Yeah, that's definitely an idea. And I think that's really in the spirit of RDC where our developers are doing that. I think like one of our sub goals that we don't really announce is, you know, these developers are very busy with their actual jobs and not necessarily sort of contributing to level up. So to like take as little of their time as possible because very often they have these like big releases that they're trying to work on or whatever else. So just by virtue of having to do like a workshop, we can speak from experience. You know, that's something that takes us a long time to sort of put together, in terms of like outlines and what are the content we're going to cover, and then how to walk through it step by step. Like the amount of time it takes me, for example, to put together a season pass is much less than the amount of time it takes to sort of talk through it with other people. And so that is kind of an added element. So i I think for sure that would definitely be a great sort of format. It might be more appropriate for a bigger event like RDC than something throughout the year, but I mean, Aaron, I don't know, I toss it over to you. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think that is a really cool idea, and that's something that we can explore. I think Dan, you hit on my concern too, is taking up too much time of our panelists, but that's something also that maybe we can do a little less formally on Gilded. We do have this community now where some of the feedback that we got from our developers was that they want more opportunities to network and to hear from each other. Sometimes they feel isolated, especially if they're just a little one person team, something like that. They don't have friends that share their passion for development. So part of the goal for spinning up that Gilded is to give them the opportunity to network, and maybe in a less structured kind of way we could have developers helping each other through Gilded as well.
Okay, so I saw you made the short. I don't know if that was experimenting, the short about analytics that Dan released. If that was maybe like some experiment you're trying to see if it will work, something like that.
We did a couple of shorts actually. We did one on core loops, we did one on analytics, we did one on prototyping, and that's part of our initiative this year to try and create a wide range of content that can appeal to different people. So if you don't have time to sit through and parse a 2-hour video, hopefully you can get some useful insights from like a quick 10-minute lecture that we give. So we definitely have more of those planned and more on the way. Actually, I think the ball is in Aaron's court right now for the
It
next
is
short.
calling me
But
out.
yeah, calling her out. No, but Erin has so much going on right now. She just hasn't, we haven't had the time. But that is definitely like we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on those shorts, and it's definitely something that we want to pursue in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking about that you want to like try to cover a big range of topics, so it's like you can like developers can see all of them. So how are like topics chosen? Are you like, oh hey, maybe I want to talk to this developer, and then okay, so let's take what we can talk about with them, or is it like the other way around? So we think about what we will talk about and then like just try to find who we can talk with.
It has been the other way around up to this point, where we have a list of topics that we want to cover. We have playlists now on YouTube, so we have these large, high level topics that these videos fall into, and we try to think about where's the greatest impact, what are the greatest needs of the community in terms of these best practices, and then it's just a matter of figuring out what developers would best present that information, who are the best examples of here's it being done really well on the platform. um, so yeah, after we kind of lay out topics, then we start trying to brainstorm developers to reach out to, and then from there it's getting it on the roadmap, depending on their schedules.
So like okay, so like you choose the topic, choose the speaker. So how do you like once it's chosen? How do you like contact them? How like what are the main challenges you have when organizing all this? Probably the most helpful thing is 𝗪𝗵𝘁, as you said.
Yes.
But
Well,
so yeah, what are like the main challenges in organizing deals?
I would say one of the benefits of being in developer relations is that we happen to know most of the developer community, because by virtue of being developer relations, we're kind of interfacing with them every day. So if I don't know the person directly, or Aaron doesn't know, then maybe 𝗪𝗼𝘁 knows, maybe somebody else on DevRel. So somebody has a connection and get us in touch. But Aaron, I think you're mostly involved with the headache of logistics on this, so I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally it's heartbreaking. We get turned down, or maybe we just, yeah. But that doesn't happen often, but it happens, and totally understandable. But not everyone's comfortable being on YouTube forever. That is something I've had to get over myself. So, but then also just logistics scheduling. So it's sometimes challenging. Sometimes we'll do a shuffle on our roadmap. Roadmap's really a suggestion rather than actual plan. So we just have to be flexible. But it's happy to say that so far I think we've done a pretty good job of picking those topics, and also developers who represent those really well, and actually keeping up a cadence pretty reasonably well, getting these videos out.
Yeah, I think we've also been very surprised to find just the eagerness and willingness of the community. But when we started out, we're like, oh, are we bugging them? Are we bothering them? But very often, a lot of enthusiasm to be on and sort of share the knowledge, which is one of the things I really love about the Roblox developer community, is there's so much willingness to sort of share that knowledge with one another. And you don't necessarily get that elsewhere in the industry, where it's much more of a business, and you want to be hush hush and sort of keep your secrets to yourself.
Secret sauce.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very true.
So you mentioned a bit like the roadmaps. I've noticed you've recently been doing more events, like the time between like the events has like been shortened. Is that so? I guess your main idea is to do like one a month, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had previously kind of been trying to do a workshop and a roundtable every month, and that was not sustainable. But like Dan said, those workshops really take quite a bit of time and energy to get them right. So we've started focusing more on the roundtables, getting those out regularly, and then trying to fill in when we have time with workshops, or more recently with the shorts. And we're also going to, starting next week, start pulling out clips from our existing videos and just sharing those as well. So specific questions that we thought were really insightful and answered very well by our panelists in particular. I'm going to start sharing those as well, so that we have more of a constant drip of content. And again, in more consumable ways. You don't have to watch the entire roundtable to, hear how, 𝗪𝗵𝘁 answers a particular question about level design, for example.
You mentioned all those shorts. So do you plan on having like some way of maybe so the community can ask, oh, maybe we'd like to know this, then maybe like pull up the files and let's see if it's there. So I guess through the YouTube comments, but is there any other way you have planned?
So I think probably Gilded is going to be our big hub for that. So in terms of like asking for topics to be covered in videos, that's something that we're going to be talking to our Gilded community about. And then we also have all of our videos in Gilded as well, and they're all tagged. So I think you can search for a particular topic, and then just the videos that are relevant to that will come up.
So you've covered like many topics. Yes, I think you said you've done 20 something events. So is there any topic that you still haven't covered that you're like really excited to talk about, or like
so many
Tons.
so many? Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, I've only done like one economy talk outside of like RDC 2019, and there's so many other topics there. There's like loot tables and drops for monsters. There's like combat balance. There's there's all sorts of things that we would love to get to, but I think because we're like a 2-man crew most of the time, well, 3 with 𝗪𝗻𝘁, I don't want to discount 𝗪𝗻𝘁, but like in terms of generating topics, there's only 2 of us and there's only so much time. And the bizarre thing as well is like, that's only a % of our day-to-day job. So in addition to trying to get all that content out, we have all these other sort of things that we're chasing throughout the day. But I don't think we're going to run out of content anytime soon. I don't know, Aaron, what do you think?
No. We have a list of topics that's pretty long, things that we want to cover. For me, the things that I'm really passionate about that I haven't gotten to cover yet, there's tutorial design, first-time user experience, UI, UX, accessibility. So those are all things that we would love to cover as well. And it's just a matter of, getting it on the roadmap, and in the case of roundtables, like finding developers who can speak to it as well.
Yeah, like in true game dev fashion, we have this backlog of features we would love to have on Level Up and negative amount of time to actually get it done. Like I think one I keep throwing out to Aaron, but I don't know how feasible it is like a design doctor segment where we sit down with a dev and just go through their game and sort of like point out areas where they could improve or optimizations or how to fix their economy and stuff. But there's definitely a lot of exciting ideas that we have and just not enough time in the day to sort of do it.
So maybe related to that, like what you could do is maybe like through the guilded open, like, okay, so let's say we're going to discuss, like, okay, so you give us like our designs or some problems you've been having, and then try to apply them. Because at the end, I think it's also seeing where people fail is a way to, more than where people fail, like it's like what problems have happened is a way to like avoid them. Because, oh yeah, if you see like, oh yeah, we did this and it worked and it worked, and it's like, okay, but I can't do it. So how
Yeah,
do you fix my problem?
that's definitely, actually, we skipped over that, Aaron, earlier, but that is one of the biggest pieces of feedback we always get is like more practical examples. And I think we've been like trying to incorporate that into like our roundtables and visuals and things like that. But we're always striving towards more and more Roblox specific examples that we can apply in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I think like 2 points. Yes, absolutely. Like seeing something that's gone wrong and trying to fix it is a really great way to learn. I think the challenge is going to be finding a volunteer willing to sign up for that. Like, yes, roast me, So yeah, like we've discussed it, and that's something that I still think would be really valuable. So it's just going to come down to, can we find somebody to let us
Who's the brave soul? Yeah.
have a conversation with. And the other thing is, like, we love our friends in the legal department. But initially, when we started the program, they were much more conservative about the big themes we could talk about. And so we ended up having to like invent fake games to use as examples in some of our workshops and things like that. But recently, having seen the work that we've done and the educational context, they have decided that we can reference games off Roblox even and use those as examples. So hopefully very soon, next time we start putting out some shorts or workshops, something like that, we'll have more concrete examples that we can point to. It's like, here's how this game does this, whether they're on Roblox or not. Hopefully on Roblox. Like, we always try to find examples from the platform. But
Yeah, that's true. For a while there, we could only talk about like the game that we were specifically focusing on for that like workshop. So like 𝗪𝗵𝘁 was the first one, and all of our examples had to come from 𝗪𝗵𝘁 throughout like all of our talks and stuff. But yeah, that's a good point. Forgot about that part.
So you mentioned you gave a talk about one in RDC 2019, Dan. So
Yes.
what are like the main difference you see between, like, okay, so doing level up and giving a talk at RDC, other than one being online, the other being virtual, what the other being
Yeah,
hybrid?
that's a good question. You have a lot more time to prepare for RDC. So they kind of like settle on topics for RDC about, I want to say 4 or 5 months in advance. So you have 4 or 5 months to get your talk together. And then it goes through like a whole review process of like the marketing team and, whoever's running RDC to make sure it's right. Actually, all of the RDC topics go all the way up to Dave, and Dave approves them. So like you have to pitch that there. Whereas like with Level Up, you know, it's just our skeleton crew here, and we kind of like decide what topics are going to be most impactful, and we kind of execute on it. And then given the aggressive schedule we try to have for Level Up, you only have about 4 weeks to get it from concept to presentation by the end. So it's definitely a bit more frantic than RDC is. But I think on the plus side of Level Up, maybe for me, is it's more nerve-wracking for me to stand up in front of 100 people and give a talk than it is to be on a stream where I can kind of like stare at my camera or something instead of this audience of people. So I think there's like pros and cons to each of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, we control the editing process on Level Up. So if there's something that we really want to take out, we can remove it ourselves. So.
Yeah, that's right. So like if you've ever seen the video, I've never said this word before in real life, but like I was so nervous, I said "wroten down" instead of "written down." Like we would edit that out to make me look much more intelligent on our YouTube video when we go on Level Up, but you know, for RDC they kind of just uploaded the video and it's kind of what it is. So yeah.
Yeah, as Roblox says, gotta fix it in post.
That's right.
So throughout this year, so you said that you started with, oh, people said that they were too long. Like, what are the things you've seen that so that help a discussion not be like too boring, too long? So what do you think are tools people can do to try to keep people's attention and make it still interesting, even though you may be gone over an hour?
Yeah, I would say for me, and this was more just needing practice being in front of a camera and running this kind of format, but initially I was kind of just reading. When we do a Level Up event, a round table, we kind of put together some topics and some questions that we want to talk through with the panelists, and I kind of have that on the side just as like notes for myself on where we're going. Originally, I was basically just reading off of that, and it kind of came off very mechanical and sort of practiced. And more so these days, we've shifted, and this is sort of the benefit as well of bringing in multiple panelists, not just a single team. It's less of an interrogation now and more of a conversation. And that's really what we're trying to drive towards is rather than reading from the list A, B, C, D, I read the initial topic, and then from there, I try and drive some organic conversation. So based off of what they're saying, I'm sort of trying to drive it into a certain way. We encourage the panelists to sort of hop in and ask each other questions as well. I think that was one of the things, you know, we just recently on Thursday did a Level Up with KreekCraft and Wonderworks, and obviously they're YouTubers, so they're practicing this, but they were really good at sort of riffing off of one a lot easier. So I think that's one of the things we sort of shifted to over time is more conversational and less interrogation. I don't know, Erin, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think like you hit all the points for roundtables. If I had anything to add, it might be that I think that most recent one, you know, with Kreek and with Wonderworks, they had an established relationship already, and so they weren't strangers thrust in this panel together, right? They knew each other, they had worked together, and so I think that helped as well with just nerves and also, you know, being able to plus one each other, talking about things. So yeah, that's for roundtables. For workshops, I would say, you know, Dan had mentioned interactivity before, really finding ways to have like hands-on exercises in those events where, you know, we might have a little bit of lecture up front where we're explaining, you know, the foundations of what we're going to be talking about, but then like, here's the practical example. Like you're going to build a spreadsheet yourself, like as we walk through step by step to balance a season pass. Kale had a really great one where he was doing player goals and the different, you know, types of players, and so he created this worksheet where you decide, you know, what types of players you're going to focus on for your game, and then what goals should come out of that. And so things like that follow along, but actually, you know, do work and apply it to their game, because every game is so different. And you know, we can talk theory at you all the time, but it's actually practical, and you can apply it to your game and see how, you know, that even though like all these games are different, and for example, like tutorials, you need to decide like, you know, who is my audience, what are their needs, you know, how does my game differ from every other game in the genre, like what are they going to be familiar with, things like that. Like those are all factors that influence your tutorial design, but to be able to like follow through and like make an outline while we're talking about tutorials and why you should be thinking of it in this way, I think that just makes it a lot more interesting and relevant to the developer in the moment. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned what was I going to say? Oh yeah, yeah. So you mentioned about like trying to educate, so trying to help people. So Roblox has that other program, well, Roblox Education. So is there any plans of maybe in the future like having level up and or maybe some type of like integration with education?
Can I tell them?
Yeah, go for it.
Spill the beans.
Our next roundtable is actually going to be an educational games roundtable in collaboration with the education team. So
yeah, we work pretty closely with the education team, and we're constantly riffing off of one another. I think the main difference between the two groups is education obviously is much more focused on like school, like providing resources to grade schools, high schools, colleges, sort of learning materials, right? They have a book that they publish semi-yearly on programming on Roblox and things like that. Whereas we're a lot more focused on the developer community specifically. But just given that we're both sharing general knowledge on game design, there's a lot of sort of collaboration between the two to see how we can sort of recycle each other's work and sort of share it in whatever format is appropriate for our initiatives that we're doing. So
and to do it efficiently, that we're not doubling up on work and even perhaps presenting two different versions of something. You know, we want to be on the same page. So yeah, we definitely work pretty closely together.
yeah, they were the first team to hire a game designer that wasn't on my team.
But then you weren't the first game designer on Roblox.
That's right. I'm the proto game designer. Yes, everyone. I designed Roblox. No, yeah, first one with the game designer title. I know because I searched for the first week for other game designers, and they were not there.
So does that mean I was number 2?
You were number 2 actually.
I'll
Kale
take
was
it.
number 3, and then Tom is our other game designer over on education. But yeah.
So you've mentioned well that you so throughout the events is there something you've like learned or like maybe you, like throughout your experience outside Roblox, which like, oh yeah, this has to be like this and like that. So is there something that maybe throughout the panels and events is like, oh, so you find like really interesting or maybe has changed the way you think about some topics?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about. I think it's not just level up. It's just been through my career at Roblox. You kind of learn a lot, and this is something. Aaron and I are both fortunate because actually our careers started with Facebook games. We both of us were at Zynga when they were really popular with like Farmville, Castleville, all those sort of games. And we were there at the critical time when mobile was really starting to blow up in the early 2010s. And we saw the company try and apply what they thought were best practices on Facebook directly to mobile and horribly, horribly fail because they fail to realize that different platforms have these little nuances that make them different from one another. And so that was something that I and Aaron, both of us, when we joined, was something that we were very, very cognizant of is like Roblox is a different platform. There's going to be things that are similar to mobile and there's going to be things that are different. But I would say just in our time at Roblox, maybe one of the biggest things is like when you're developing on mobile, one of the things that you spend a lot of cycles on is that first time user experience, that first 5 minutes. It's highly, highly polished. They know down to the millisecond exactly what players are doing from moment to moment in the game. They're heavily analyzing it. They're optimizing it. They're throwing out the tutorial. They're making a new tutorial. And on Roblox, there are no tutorials at all. And initially when I got here, I was like, oh, maybe it's just because people haven't thought to do it. And what you would see is when people were first trying to put in these more heavily focused tutorials on Roblox, it doesn't work because Roblox is a very, very social platform. And very often what you're going to find is it's roving groups of friends that are going from game to game. And if they can't play those experiences together right away, they're going to be frustrated and they're going to quit. So it's just like little things like that you learn. But also in level up events, I mean, anytime I interact with a developer, I'm learning something new. So one example from the events is just utilizing social media platforms and how you do that, right? I forget which level up it was specifically, but that was something that afterwards, we gather up together like, oh, that's a good insight. We should, share that with the community whenever we work with them in the future. But yeah, Aaron, tossing over to you.
Yeah, I was just thinking of another example. So like on mobile, players actually download your game onto their phones, and there's this little icon that's in their face every day, every time they open up their phone. And it's a best practice to change that icon anytime you make an update, because you're likely to, kind of stop noticing the icon after a while, but when it changes, you notice that it changes, and it will re-engage players who maybe aren't playing quite as regularly. But yeah, we discovered on Roblox that it's not as simple as any change is good, right? You change that icon and you're going to re-engage your players. Like, not necessarily. You can actually, have negative impacts on your metrics, because, if you put something on that icon that maybe is confusing, that doesn't simultaneously communicate the update, but also remain true to what players expect the content of the game to be, yeah, you can actually drive down your concurrence and your retention. So that was eye-opening for me as well. Like, we were constantly learning, like Dan said, like this is a different ecosystem, and it's really been fascinating to learn those things.
Something I think that is quite unique about Roblox is how multi-platform it is, because a lot of games is like, okay, so you make a game for mobile and it's gonna be for mobile. It has its stuff. You make maybe the closest thing is like Microsoft, which has games for Xbox and Windows. But I think it's really unique, Roblox, in the way how it's like you have it in almost all platforms, like consoles, VR, computers, phones, tablets. I think it's quite interesting trying to understand like what's your audience, what's like the devices your audience play. For example, I do a lot of theme park related things. The main audience is mobile, which I guess is for Roblox, but it's a very big percentage of mobile. So I think it's really interesting trying to understand your audience, because at the end, it's what I tell a lot of people: you can have a great game, you can work tons on your game, but if people don't play it or can't play it, it's just a bad game. So let's talk about a bit about the editing of the videos. So you said you've learned a bit about. At first you maybe started just editing some mistakes out. So how has the like editing like progress from like a year ago to now? And what are the things that you look for to like keep or maybe just remove?
Um, yeah, no, we try to preserve as much of the content as possible. So usually it is like, oh, we paused too long while like Dan asked this question and I'm supposed to be pulling up an image, and it just takes me a minute to get it up. It will take out that long pause, things like that. But previously we were just doing that and that was it. And now with the addition of clips that we're going to be releasing soon, we're also taking a look at like, yes, this whole thing in its entirety is useful, but how do we make the parts more useful as well? So like, are there particular questions that were really intriguing and really insightful, that we can share to get a particular point across, right? Or to make that piece of information easier to search and consume, right? So yeah, we started going back to our old videos, but also mostly starting with our newer ones, identifying those little interactions and clips and things that we can pull out to share those.
Yeah, there's not a lot of there's not really any editing of the content itself. We give panelists the right to sort of request if there's something that they were uncomfortable with answering or something that we remove it. We've only ever had one team pull out one question and it was related to like business practices. But the majority of time when we're making edits, it's because, I messed up my intro or there was construction in the background, so we needed to sort of like record it. For Kale, when he was doing his intro, we kind of jokingly internally call him Dr. Doolittle. He's got like two of every animal in his house, but his birds were very loud during the intro. So Aaron had him sort of like re-record it. But outside of that, it's not like we're editing panelists for them to say what we want them to say. It's mostly just making sure that it's a much more easily enjoyable video on YouTube, and we're removing awkward pauses and internet connections dying and things like that.
So you mentioned about like the feedback you get from the audience, so from from the developers and people who are like in the event. So but about like the community, so the people who watch the videos, what are like the main feedback you've gotten from them? Have you like, is there some like something that is very like prevalent?
Too long. Too long was the constant refrain early on. So we're addressing that one. We did get some kind of surprising feedback. It surprised us, in that there was some backlash about what was perceived to be as spotlighting developers who are already successful and therefore did not need additional exposure. And it's not fair that Roblox is doing that when they could be, supporting up and coming developers instead, right? And so that one kind of took us by surprise, and like recognizing that yes, there's a valid point there to be seen, that certainly would love to showcase our less successful, like up and coming developers as well. But I think Level Up is not the place for that, at least not yet. That we are, our entire stated purpose is to, teach these best practices, and the best way to do that is to talk to developers who are successful because they are implementing those best practices already. So I think there was a little misunderstanding about why we were selecting the developers that we were, and that was really a messaging problem on our end. And once we started more emphasizing like the reason why we were talking to these developers, then we stopped getting that feedback.
Yeah, it was kind of like a crash course in the internet for us. So like we when we were thinking about it with roundtables, part of it was like as a thank you to these devs, we want to make sure that we're spotlighting and celebrating them. And so we called like the topic on the dev forum developer spotlight, like mini tune. And so everyone misconstrued the intent of Level Up. They thought it was to sort of spotlight this developer exclusively and celebrate them, when really it was like, no, we're trying to like, they're sharing their knowledge with the community. We want to have them share their knowledge. So we had to just mess around with the words a little bit to make it much more explicit that this is, a resource for the community, not a sort of vanity project for already well-known developers.
Right.
But yeah, that was definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, you want to learn from experts, right? And so it makes sense to go to developers who are successful.
But actually, the Minitune is the only person who has like, well, other than the team, who's actually been twice on Level Up, I think.
Yes.
That's right.
Any plans on
Yeah,
bringing someone back?
I would love to have Craft back again. I thought that was like a lot of fun. All of the panelists I think have been like really delightful. I don't know, Aaron, is there a hot pick for you, a number one that you want to see back on Level Up?
Our very first panelists were 𝗪𝗪𝘁, and I think that there are some other topics. They talked about live ops before, but maybe something like progression or even monetization would be really valuable to have back as well. So, we want to keep having new faces on, new perspectives and things like that. But then, yeah, I would be happy to have any of our panelists back. They've all been fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, just given the way that we do our Level Up events, like I said, we kind of keep it higher level, but I would love to go more in depth with some developers on, like, for example, like 𝗟𝗏𝘃 with like level design or something like that. But the community is so big and there's so many topics to cover. So, it's unlikely we'll be recycling a lot of the developers over and over. We'll probably be going from topic to topic and expert to expert over time.
I think, one of the reasons we had Minitune back, in addition to him just being a fabulous resource and very willing to help us out, was that we wanted on that particular panel, the level design panel, to represent games of very different genres, right? So we had an open world game, we had a shooter, we had more of a narrative focused game. And so yeah, it was really useful to talk to many two in that context as well, and to have those different perspectives present.
So you've talked about a bit of like the legal limits you had at the start. So what are like the main legal issues? If well, not any issues, but like because I assume like there's some things, for example, you guys have experience with but can't say because of probably some NDA signed. Or so what are the main issues when in this topic about when trying to talk about certain aspects?
Sure. So yeah, I think the two big ones are NDA. Like we can't give examples necessarily from our experience because we are under NDA about those things. Even though, boy, do we have some great examples of what not to do in particular. But the other one is fair use, which is the intellectual property kind of framework for education, and it is even according to lawyers I've spoken to, it is murky. It is a little bit untested, and so you can say like, oh, this is an educational context, so therefore I can show this image or I can show this video, and a lot of it comes down to the context, the amount that you are using it, how much of your content is made up of those examples as opposed to original content. Like there are just a lot of things to keep in mind, and even the lawyers were stressing like just try to be reasonable because it's unproven, like I said, and we might get some complaints. We might have to have something taken down and edited again, and we just have to be prepared for that. But yeah, so far, I think we've treaded pretty carefully. We do get permission from developers to use images from their games and stuff like that. So we try to stay on the right side of it.
Yeah, not much to add.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say not much to add. If you've ever seen our decks that we put together internally for like Accelerator, it's like filled with like SpongeBob memes and stuff, and unfortunately we're not able to do that for Level Up. So
yeah, losing the memes was a real blow.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was one of our tools to keep the presentations interesting, and we lost it.
So Dan, specifically, so you said you've learned a lot like presenting these events. So what are like, let's say someone, for example, to some of like the event organizers. So what are like the some tips you would give them from like, okay, so how to like hosting an event and like trying to keep things on topic and trying to keep it interesting and fresh?
Yeah, I when starting out, for some reason, I was locked in a mindset of like, okay, I have to be an entertainer and I have to sort of mechanically do this stuff. And over time, I've kind of just learned like it's kind of like everything else in life, right? Like dating and everything else. Just be yourself, kind of treat it as the same conversation you would have if you saw that person at RDC, right? And just demonstrate a general interest in it. And I think the more you sort of just naturally have the conversation flow and less try to perform on screen, just the more genuine and the better it's going to be. I think the other thing, and I kind of use the analogy of like, growing up on a summer day, you would dip your foot in the water to see how cold it was. And then like, you really, really didn't want to go into water, but like once you jumped into water, it's kind of fine. And that's a lot of the times how I kind of operate in these events. I kind of get nervous beforehand, but like once you're in it, then you're kind of like going with the flow. And so like more and more these days, I try and sort of channel that energy when I'm on the screen of just like, well, I've already done this a million times before, like, so let's go and do it. So I think it's really just more of a practice thing. Like this is, if running events is something you're passionate about, but you're nervous to do it or you're unsure if it's going to be successful, with everything else in life, you just got to try it. You just got to fail at it. And over time, you're going to learn and you're going to get better at it. But nobody's ever going to be perfect on the first time. Right. So you just got to go for it. If it's something you're passionate about, just do it.
Okay, so we're reaching the end of the panel, so I think we should start like closing things up. So, well, we've talked about like level up, and so let's talk about what are like the future for level up. So, how do you see level up in a year from now?
Ooh. Oh boy. So we mentioned that we have experiments that we want to run. So I think we'll have more event types and more ways of consuming the content. I'm trying not to get too specific. But yeah, we're constantly evolving. We do have ideas for maybe different types of live events and things like that we can do. And yeah, just seeing what works. It's hard to predict that now, but especially as our Gilded community hopefully grows, we can start involving that community in those decisions as well, and yeah, have a better way of predicting how things are going to be received. Have some polls going and stuff like that to really let them help shape the direction.
Yeah, I think just doubling down on that, Gilded is kind of our shot on goal and sort of growing the community organically. And over time, we would love to sort of shift more and more ownership or direction over to the community in terms of like, what is it that they want to see? Or maybe even like if somebody in the community is passionate and they want to host their own sort of like level up, right? We would sort of start them out and have them start to do that to where it's more and more like just a community sort of driven initiative to sort of knowledge share with one another, and we're sort of guiding them along. That's a long-term 3 to 5 year vision for level up, but right now it's really just trying to find that interest in the community, find the formats that work the most, and then just double down on them and constantly iterate and make it better and better over time. So really this has been a learning process for us. We started out, our first level up ever was like a roundtable plus a 4 hour workshop. And now we're doing things like 10-minute videos as well as like group roundtables and stuff. So I think no matter what, if you were to time travel a year or 2 years in the future, I think for the better, level up is going to be a very different beast from even what it is right now. So.
For sure, Dan. That after that first event, it was on a Saturday. It was like all day long, and afterwards,
It was
he was like,
awful.
"Never again."
Yeah, never.
He was fried. Yeah.
We tried that. We hated it. Yep.
So any funny moments or um yeah, so any funny moments you've from like this year of events you can.
I guess most recently, 𝗪𝗵𝘁's excitement over being followed by 𝗓𝗏craft was
That's true.
quite amusing. She was very proud of herself.
She was like chasing him down for like over a month, like add me. 𝗪𝗵𝘁's a little aggressive sometimes. But yeah, that was funny. And finally she sends us a link to like an image of 𝗓𝗏craft following her. So that was a pretty funny moment. 𝗪𝗵𝘁's always entertaining. He was like showing off his plushie, and then when we uploaded his video, I guess it was like a meme in his community that he was bald. So then I like responded to his tweet as well, like, oh crap, we didn't edit out his bald head on this, and the community sort of like celebrated the acknowledgement that 𝗪𝗁 is bald. So
Oh,
that was
recently
fun as
just
well.
had a bold topic discussion.
A bald, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we have those really great moments on and off camera with the developers where we're sort of like celebrating. Even outside of Level Up and Accelerator, the meme for a while was I was a boomer because, I guess at like 30 years old, now I'm completely out of touch. It's only getting worse by the year, but you'll still see some of those accelerators like pop into Level Up or something like, oh, it's Boomer Dan, so.
I will also say 𝗪𝗁 playing his accordion during an after party was a special moment as well. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We have some good like inside jokes on Level Up too, like the watermelon pizza. I know Jessa's in here, but Jessa likes to drop that one in all the time. Or me sharing a video to 𝗟𝗪𝘃 for people to watch before the Level Up begins. So,
I guess. So anything else you want to say before we finish the panel and move on to the Q&A?
Please, if you have not already, like and subscribe to the Developer Relations YouTube channel and join us on Gilded to continue the conversation about Level Up there.
Yeah,
I keep being that person. I'm sorry.
Yeah, smash that like button. And I know we sound like a broken record. This is not something that we're obligated to say. It's something that we passionately like to say. But please give us any feedback. Please fill out surveys. We read every single piece of feedback that's there. It's something that we could bring internally and be like, see, look, everyone likes Level Up, or see, everyone hates Level Up. Let's change it. But for us, it's how we iterate and we make it better, because ultimately this is not something that's for us, it's for you, the community. So what are the best ways that we can share that knowledge from the community and from ourselves with you? That's what we want to hear. So
Thank you so much. Okay, so now we'll move to Q&A. I'll open the Q&A. It should be open now, so you can write your question. You go to chat and then Q&A, then we'll try to answer them.
looks like 𝗟𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗹 might have one.
Sure. So in the video, you won't see the question. So 𝗟𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗹 has asked then. So basically, how did you get your job at Roblox, and why specifically Roblox?
Oh, that's a fun one. So I don't know how much you guys know about like elsewhere in the industry outside of Australia, which is Roblox, but there's a pretty high turnover rate at different companies, and it's not by virtue of anything the developers do. It's just kind of how the business works. If your game isn't successful, sometimes an entire studio will shut down, or even for some games, they really scale up before they go live, and then they need to sort of shrink down just to sort of manage it. And so just naturally, some of those jobs dry up. For me, at my last role, I'd like to joke that our entire studio got broken up via text. So I came in and there was a few engineers and my designer buddy standing around like, what's going on? Or like, go check your email. And in the email, it's like, hey, sorry, so we're shutting down the entire studio. So that was a bummer. And so, but I'm kind of used to it at this point, 10 years in the industry, that stuff kind of happens. So I was like, all right, time to open up LinkedIn, time to update it. And I actually got reached out to by a recruiter. So this is something that's kind of funny for our generation. This is more of a boomerism thing, but Aaron and I are kind of in this slice of generations that nobody knows what Roblox is. You have, a younger generation that grew up on Roblox and is developing on Roblox. And you have an older generation who raised kids who are on Roblox, or even have kids right now who are playing Roblox. And they're all like, oh my God, we know Roblox. But for us, we don't really know about Roblox. So they reached out. They're like, hey, do you want to join Roblox? I went to check it out. And again, to show my age, growing up, I loved playing Flash games. So websites like Newgrounds and addictinggames.com and all of that. And I just got that strong vibe from Roblox, and I was like, okay, I'm interested. So I went to go and check out the job. It was something that was very, very different from what I've done before, right? Where before I was working on specific games, but it was something that was an interesting opportunity. And I sort of talked about it earlier here. But one of my frustrations within the industry, and maybe even in education, is I don't feel like they do necessarily a great job of teaching game design to people who want to get into game design. And so I saw this as an opportunity to sort of right that wrong and sort of teach the community. And so it was something that I found to be an interesting opportunity, and I went after it. So I don't know. Do we want to talk about my first couple of days as game designer one at Roblox, or did that answer the question? Yeah, it was just how I got the job.
So Noble Draconian asks, so what software do you use to split the screens up with the multiple cam feeds? Is it just Zoom with a fancy Roblox front end?
Let's see. What software do you use to split your screen into multiple cam feeds and whatnot? So it's just Zoom. We just use Zoom for our level up events. We'll record that video. It gets captured on the cloud, and then we'll edit it in frame.io. We'll do like timestamps for it and make edits. Yeah.
Okay, so I have questions for you. So so what is it like being in like the game insights team at Roblox? So you mentioned you work with accelerators, you also work with some games. So what is it like? How different is it being in the game insights than working on a mobile game or something outside Roblox?
There is no more wholesome and rewarding job in the industry than being on this team. Like, completely, sincerely. You when you're in the industry, game development's a team sport. You can, form really strong bonds with members on your team. You can have really fulfilling moments where, a feature that you worked on was successful, or you hear back from players that they really appreciated it. But yeah, being at Roblox on Game Insights team, we work closely with developers, and we get to, see them growing as devs and learning and becoming successful or growing on success that they already have. And that's very rewarding and fulfilling. And everyone is so sweet and so appreciative. I've received care packages from teams that I've worked with just out of the blue, just totally surprising me. Just super, super wholesome. Yes, you got one too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Simple Dev sent me a mask during the pandemic. Yeah.
Nice. Yep.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish, and then I'll hop in.
Oh, yeah, just and I will say that this is what I needed to be excited about game development again, and also to fall back on my background in education and things like that to do this mentorship, which was always part of kind of what I wanted to be doing all along. Yeah, it's been really great.
Yeah, it's definitely been a super rewarding experience, and at least for me, I see a bit of myself in a lot of the developers that I work with, just really passionate people who are pursuing a dream of creating really fun games. And so it's always a joy to sort of help them out on that path. I remember one of the earliest conversations I had was actually with the original devs of 𝗟𝗏𝘃, 𝗵𝗃, and oh my goodness, I forgot his name. But this was what before they even had the pet feature, and they were sitting down with me and they were like, Dan, we're really at this point where we're about to graduate college, and we're trying to figure out if we can pursue a career on Roblox or if we need to look to other platforms. And through working with them, we ultimately landed on the pet feature, and they kind of just took it and ran with it. And that moment where they blew up and I saw that they had sort of like made it as like successful developers is definitely one of the most rewarding memories that I've had. And we have those moments all the time here, right? Like Bad Business, the 𝗪𝗏𝘃𝗲 developers actually went through Accelerator. We met every single week, seeing their game take off and them going from like poor college kids to like very successful. Those are just great moments that you don't get working on a game. When you're working on a game, you're working in Excel every day for like 2-3 years until your game ships. And here, it's kind of like a new adventure every week, which is just really, really fun and rewarding.
So, Railworks asks, is there any topic that a dev wants to cover up on Level Up? Like, what do you have any suggestions for making that happen?
Yeah, we're going to be having those conversations on Gilded, so please do. You can chime in now in the general chat if you want to, but we will also be running some polls and things.
And Railworks also asks, so for current Roblox devs trying to break into Corp, do you have any tips?
For joining Roblox specifically, or
Yeah.
any sort of company.
Yeah, I think he means getting a job at Roblox.
I think really it doesn't matter whether it's Roblox or any other company that you're applying to. I think the main things that you want to do is you really want to sort of demonstrate a passion for the role that you're trying to apply to, and you really want to demonstrate experience for that role that you have. And I think Roblox developers kind of have a unique advantage there where, for me, when I was back in college and I was trying to get my first job in the industry, we didn't have like a really nice studio that we could work in, such as like the Roblox studio. And I think for Roblox developers, one thing I really want them to sort of realize is having that portfolio of games that you've already built already puts you much more at an advantage than anybody else who's studying a 4-year career in college and writing 10-page papers, because writing 10-page papers is not really what you do in the game industry, right? You're building a game. So as long as you have that passion, and as long as you're able to demonstrate it and you're able to demonstrate that experience, you should be sort of good to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I've had developers talk to me about trying to get into AAA too, and they really are anxious that, like, oh, I don't have a degree. How am I going to get in? I'm like, no, hold on. You have way more experience than I did. You've actually been doing the job. So that's a huge advantage. And like, do not feel at all self-conscious about the experience that you have, because it's invaluable. So.
Yeah, I think it's actually like something curious, especially with like the technology like sector, especially with video games. It's there's no need, like, yeah, I'm right now I'm at university, but it's like there's no need to be at university, as in a way, as it's not what will define if you get the job or not. I think it's more like the experience you have, and also the passion you have, because you can have a lot of experience, but if you're someone who is like, oh yeah, I'm just here to make money, it's like maybe it's probably better to hire someone else, because game design, this is something I've learned like throughout the years, is basically working as a team. It's something you can do alone, but it's usually something that you will do as a team. So I think teamwork is something that is really important. So learning to work as a team.
For sure. And I will say that probably the biggest thing that I got out of my college career, and I have 3 degrees, way more than I need for game development. Um, the biggest thing that I got out of it was networking, and it was working with those teams, kind of forging those lifelong friendships, and like most importantly, like proving myself to be reliable and creative and someone who's good to have on your team. And then that's how I got my first job. One of my former teammates in school, who was still a classmate of mine, got hired at Zynga, and they had some openings, and so he referred me because he'd worked with me before, and we got along well, and he also trusted me. So um, I do strongly believe in education in all of its forms, and you do not necessarily have to have a piece of paper saying that you learned this thing. Get your knowledge wherever you can find it. That's part of why Level Up exists. But more importantly, like, demonstrate it. And like you said, work with teams, because there are a lot of really valuable things you can get out of that. Learning how to work with people, learning how to give feedback, learning how to take feedback, but also that networking aspect, super important.
Yeah, I was muted. Just a reminder that you can post a question in the Q&A section. So we'll probably be here until past.
Real quick, I want to say shout out to 𝗪𝗵𝘁, whose name I forgot earlier when I was talking about the 2 developers in the Ďavi. 𝗪𝗵𝘁 and
Don't worry, Dan. I'll fix that in post.
Yeah, you gotta fix it in post. Don't embarrass me like that.
Just put a robotic voice.
That's right.
Yes. Oh yeah. I've just seen. So I suppose the question in general. So they say I'm interested in doing an internship at Roblox once I'm old enough, but more one in the legal department. I am from Germany, so it's kind of difficult with the visas. Would you recommend doing the work to get the position?
Well, I don't. Maybe I'll put Aaron on the spot here. For me, I'm not as familiar with the legal industry. Each industry is kind of different. My wife works in science, and it's very, very important what degree you have in that for what position that you get. Whereas in the game industry, really you just show up with a game and you're already ahead of anybody with a 4-year degree. So it really depends on the industry that you're in, and I can't really speak to the legal one. In terms of applying to Roblox, I would say try. I mean, I would apply, but also don't be afraid to start your career out at somewhere smaller and work over, right? Like, Zynga wasn't necessarily my dream job out of college, but it was a great opportunity. And I think for you, and this is something that I saw with a lot of people in school, don't just try and wait for the absolute one that you want, right? Be willing to sort of go to places and get experience first. And as you start to build that experience, your opportunities grow from there, right? Where when I first started in the industry, I had very limited options. And now 10 years later, there's a lot more options that are available to me. That's a very natural thing in any industry. And I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind.
Yeah, in terms of the legal department, I really have only spoken to them about like intellectual property and fair use concerns. I know that, if you want to be a lawyer, there's a lot of extra education that goes into that, and certification and testing, and it's all very tied to where you're working as well. So that can be very complicated. But yeah, I really can't get any more specific than that, I guess. I'm afraid I don't have a lot of information about that. But just to reiterate, I can say this word, reiterate what Dan said. For sure, absolutely always apply. I see, especially among female developers, a concern of like, I'm not qualified for this position. And you have to be willing to throw yourself out there, even if you're not necessarily qualified for that particular position. Like, you don't have exactly 8 years of experience in game development or something. You haven't shipped 4 titles, you've shipped 2. Be willing to put yourself out there, and it's entirely possible that they'll say, hey, yeah, maybe not this role, but we might have this other role that's good for you. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. Like, shoot your shot, and be willing to ask questions. So if you do get rejected, say, hey, could you tell me why? Could you maybe point me in direction of, ways that I could address those gaps that would maybe make me more likely to get in the next time. And sometimes they won't respond to you. Recruiters are busy, but sometimes, like, I've gotten some very thorough responses back from doing that, and it can really help you learn and put you on the right track. And it also, shows to them that you are serious, you are interested, and you're willing to learn. So that can really leave them with a good impression of you as well. So if you do revisit later, that can help your case as well.
Yeah, I think one of the main issues, and it's something I have a lot, is that undervaluing yourself. Like, in so many times I'm like, oh yeah, I can't apply to this. I don't. But then if you think about it, it's like, yeah, I've done this before, or yeah, maybe I am qualified. Maybe I should. And so I think that's one of like the big. That's one of the things I think you don't learn from university. You learn with experience. That it's like, probably more than you think you know.
Yeah, everyone's got imposter syndrome. I still do. I'm like, maybe I'm not that good of a systems designer. I don't know. To say.
Yeah.
But
So,
you're never gonna get anything that you want if you don't even try. So
I have a question. They ask. So, what is the difference between being an incubator and accelerator in Roblox? Kind of curious about that.
okay, I can attempt to answer this. So originally, the difference between the two groups were accelerator are development teams that are coming in and starting a brand new game from scratch, whereas incubators are coming in with an established game and they're trying to work on 1 or 2 really cool features. That evolved over time in the history of the accelerator program. So at some point, that eventually got smashed together into just accelerator for about a year or 2. And then after about a year or 2, they pulled it apart again, and accelerator became still creating a game from scratch, whereas incubator became, when Roblox went public, there's a lot of interest from elsewhere in the industry on developing on Roblox. And so incubator became more bringing in 1 or 2 or 3 teams from outside of Roblox and really having them sort of try and learn the Roblox platform. And so this really cool thing occurred within that program where incubators and accelerators are in like chat groups together, and they're both sort of sharing knowledge. The accelerator sharing what is Roblox and what's so weird about it and different about it, and the incubators sharing, hey, this is my experience from elsewhere in the industry. Maybe try this out on Roblox, kind of a thing. So,
And now we've got Game Fund as well, which is
true.
a whole separate program that funds games. There's a acceptance criteria and things like that. There's a whole process for it, but they also get some support from Game Insights team. So.
Yeah.
There's one more question. I think we'll close out on that after. So, is there any competition in the accelerator program chat, or is it a private information?
Competition in what way? Like they're trying to compete against each other to be better, or I I guess maybe I'll try and attempt to answer it that way, and then if that's not what you're asking, maybe clarify in the general chat. But um, I have never really found there to be competition among teams in Accelerator outside of maybe like playful competition. For the most part, it's an extremely collaborative effort. They're constantly will do play tests every week. All the teams will come to the play test. They'll provide constructive feedback to one another. If one of the accelerators is stuck with something, they have a bug, or they're not really sure how to implement something, the other accelerators are going to help them out. Really, if we saw competition, we would try to discourage it because it's really supposed to be a knowledge sharing sort of experience where developers are working with one another and they're trying to just become better at their craft. So.
Okay. Um, so I think we'll be closing the event. So once again, thank you so much to Dan and Aaron for accepting the offer. It's been very interesting event. Um, for those who assisted, remember to fill in the survey form. It helps me a lot, as Dan and Aaron says. Those forms help a lot to improve and see what people are interested in too. So once again, thank you so much. If you guys want to say something to close it.
Thank you so much for having us and giving us the opportunity to talk about the program and kind of give a peek behind the scenes. So it's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And as I'll be a broken record here, but anything that you want to see from Level Up, join our guild. We'd love to hear from you. And on the topics we talked about later, follow your dreams. Just go after it. Just take a shot. Don't be afraid to fail. I failed plenty of times, but you eventually get to where you want to go because you learn and you grow and you become better. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, I'll stop the recording 1 second.